My name is Miles Everett, and the night my wife locked me out, the city felt louder than it ever had, sirens echoing off wet pavement, a bus hissing as it knelt at the curb, someone laughing too hard across the street. The company is Mom's now. Rachel laughed, standing in the doorway of the townhouse we once argued about paint colors in. She tossed my coat after me like it was an afterthought, not something that used to hang beside hers. Behind her, my mother-in-law Diane leaned on her cane and smiled. "Go wash floors," she said softly like advice. "You were always better with your hands than your head." I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just stood there, the cold biting through my shirt, watching the door close with a click that felt permanent. What they didn't understand was how quiet betrayal sounds. No thunder. No shouting. Just the absence of your name where it used to matter. My briefcase sat beside me on the sidewalk, scuffed at the corners. Inside it was the company seal. My seal, the one I was supposed to keep locked away unless the board was present. I reached for it instinctively, then stopped. Because it wasn't there. My stomach tightened, not with panic but with a strange clarity. I replayed the afternoon in my head, Rachel insisting she organize my documents, Diane hovering too close, the seal missing when I packed up. They thought it meant ownership, control, power. They had no idea it also carried responsibility. And the moment they used it without understanding what it bound. They didn't take my company. They took on something far heavier than me. I didn't sleep that night. I walked. Miles of it. Past shuttered storefronts and flickering streetlights, my shoes slapping the pavement like a metronome counting down something I couldn't yet name. Every few steps, my phone buzzed, emails from junior partners, missed calls from numbers I recognized and ignored. I wasn't ready to talk. I needed to think. The seal wasn't just symbolic. It was procedural. It authorized decisions that came with automatic triggers, clauses buried so deep most executives never read them twice. I had. Not because I was paranoid but because my father taught me to read the fine print the way other people read faces. I stopped at an all-night diner and slid into a booth by the window. Coffee arrived, burnt and bitter. I welcomed it. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, unshaven, exhausted, still wearing the wedding ring I hadn't yet taken off. Rachel's laugh echoed in my head. Not cruel. Confident. She'd always mistaken confidence for understanding. I pulled out my notebook, the one I never let anyone see, and flipped to a page marked with a red tab. Contingent liability, dormant, it read. I traced the line with my finger, feeling my pulse slow. The seal activated transfers, yes. But it also acknowledged assumption of risk. Personal guarantees. Environmental exposure. A lawsuit frozen for 3 years, waiting for the wrong signature to wake it up. I paid my check and stepped back into the cold, suddenly grateful for the distance. They thought they'd erased me. What they'd actually done was put their names where mine used to be, on a line that had never been meant for them. Morning found me on a park bench, watching joggers circle a frozen pond like nothing in the world had shifted overnight. I rubbed my hands together for warmth and finally took the ring off. It felt lighter than I expected, which bothered me more than if it had hurt. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. "Where are you?" Rachel asked. No apology. Just irritation like I'd misplaced myself. "Not at home," I said. Pause. Papers rustled on her end. "Mom's meeting with the attorneys today. You don't need to be involved anymore." That word, anymore, landed wrong. Like she was erasing a chapter without reading the ending. "Make sure they read section 12, I said almost gently. She laughed. "Miles, please. You always did this. Overcomplicating things." The call ended before I could respond. I walked to my old office building and stood across the street, hands in my pockets, watching people stream in. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. What mattered was happening in conference rooms where my absence would feel like relief, at first. At noon, my former assistant texted me a single line. "They're using the seal." I sat on the curb and closed my eyes. Section 12 required disclosure within 24 hours of assumption. Environmental audits. Retroactive liabilities. The kind that don't care who meant well or who laughed last. I remembered Diane once saying, "If it's not visible, it's not real." She'd said it about mold in her basement. She'd say it about this too. But some things only exist on paper until the moment they don't. And once acknowledged, they don't disappear just because you didn't know they were there. By late afternoon, the calls changed tone. Unknown numbers at first. Then familiar ones, partners who used to nod at me in meetings, voices now strained, careful. I let most of them ring. Control, I'd learned, sometimes came from silence. I went back to the diner. Same booth. Same burnt coffee. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just refilled my cup and slid a napkin toward me when she noticed my hands shaking. At 3:17 p.m., my phone lit up with Diane's name. "Miles," she said, breathless, the cane tapping faintly in the background. "There's been confusion." I pictured her in that glass conference room, walls too clean, the seal pressed onto documents she hadn't read. "What kind?" I asked. "Our attorneys say there's exposure. Significant exposure." She lowered her voice. "You should have told us." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Responsibility always arrived late, carrying blame like luggage. "You didn't ask," I said. She snapped back. "Rachel trusted you." "No," I replied. "She replaced me." Silence stretched. I could hear someone whispering near her, urgency bleeding through the phone. "How much?" she asked finally. I looked out the window at the street, at people rushing past with places to be. "Once it's fully activated," I said, "north of 500 million. The line went dead. I didn't feel triumph. Just a strange, hollow calm. Like setting down something heavy you'd been carrying for years without realizing it had weight. I left the diner before the sun went down. I didn't want to watch the light fade from that same window again. It felt too symbolic, too neat, and nothing about this deserved to feel tidy. My phone buzzed nonstop as I walked. Rachel. Then her. Then her again. I ignored them all until a text finally cut through the noise. "Please come back. We need to talk. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just need." Urgency wrapped in entitlement. I stopped under an overpass where the city hummed louder, where echoes swallowed softer sounds. I called my old mentor, Frank Delaney, the only man who had warned me about mixing family with governance. "They've assumed full liability," he said after I explained. No surprise in his voice. Just confirmation. "Once the regulators get the filings, it won't matter who meant what." "Can I stop it?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "But only if they hand control back. Publicly. In writing." I thanked him and hung up. Rachel finally reached me an hour later, her voice tight, stripped of laughter. "Mom's health can't handle this, Miles." I leaned against the cold concrete, feeling the vibration of traffic through my spine. "Then she shouldn't have taken my place," I said. "You'd really let us drown?" she asked. I closed my eyes. I thought of the seal. Of the laughter. Of the door closing. "I didn't throw anyone into the street," I said. "You did." And for the first time she had nothing to say. They asked to meet the next morning. Neutral ground. A law firm downtown with frosted glass and furniture designed to make everyone feel equally small. I arrived early. Old habit. I sat alone at the long table, palms flat against the wood, noticing the faint ring where a glass had once been left too long. Marks like that never disappear. They just fade enough for people to pretend they're gone. Rachel walked in first. No makeup. No silk robe. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Diane followed, slower than usual, her cane tapping too hard against the floor. Confidence had left her posture. Fear had moved in. The attorney spoke in careful phrases. Exposure. Regulatory obligation. Immediate remediation. I let them talk. I watched Rachel's hands twist together, the way they used to when she was lying but hoped she wasn't. Finally Diane turned to me. "You planned this," she said. I shook my head. "I prepared for it. There's a difference, but people only understand it when it's too late." Frank slid a document across the table toward them. "This restores operational control to Mr. Everett," he said calmly. "Effective immediately. It halts the acceleration." Rachel looked at the paper like it might bite her. "And if we don't sign?" The room went quiet. I answered before anyone else could. "Then it continues. With your names on it." Diane's pen hovered, trembling. In that moment I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. But clarity has a way of hardening you, just the pen scratched louder than it should have. Diane signed first. The moment her name hit the page, her shoulders slumped, like something invisible had finally been set down, or placed squarely back where it belonged. Rachel hesitated longer. Her eyes flicked to me, searching for something familiar to grab onto. I gave her nothing. Not cruelty. Not comfort. Just stillness. When she signed, it felt less like victory and more like a door quietly unlocking. The attorneys gathered the papers. Phones came out. Instructions were whispered. The room shifted from confrontation to cleanup, like a storm passing without apology. Control transferred back to me with a series of clicks and confirmations that felt almost anticlimactic. Rachel followed me into the hallway. "I didn't think you'd actually let it get this far," she said. I stopped walking. "That's the problem," I replied. You thought. She flinched, not at the words but at the truth behind them. What happens now? She asked. I looked through the glass wall at the city below. Traffic moving, people unaware, systems continuing because someone took responsibility for the parts no one likes to look at. Now I do my job, I said. The one I was doing before I got replaced. She nodded slowly like she understood. But understanding isn't acceptance. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed with a new notification. An internal alert confirming suspension of the dormant claim. Temporarily. I stared at the word temporary as the doors closed. Some consequences pause. Others just wait. Enough to stand your ground without raising your voice. I moved out that afternoon. Not in anger. Not in secrecy. Just with boxes stacked neatly, each one lighter than the last. The townhouse felt different without shouting, emptier but also clearer, like a room after smoke has finally cleared. By evening the board convened. Faces on a screen. Me at the head of the table again, wearing the same jacket I'd worn the night I was thrown out. No one mentioned it. They didn't need to. Authority has a way of reintroducing itself without explanations. The dormant claim didn't disappear. It stabilized. Contained. I authorized audits, disclosures, slow repairs, the unglamorous work that keeps disasters from becoming headlines. The kind of work Rachel used to mock because it didn't look like success. Later that night she texted me a single sentence. I didn't know it was this heavy. I typed back, then erased it, then typed again. That's why it was never yours to carry. I slept in a small apartment with bare walls and borrowed furniture. The window rattled in the wind. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. Weeks later, I heard Diane step down for health reasons. Rachel stayed on, but not where she used to sit. Titles change faster than trust. Sometimes I think about the seal, how small it was, how much weight it held. Not power. Responsibility. They laughed when they took it from me. They stopped laughing when they learned what it meant. And I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to be signed.